Alrighty, y'all. How you going? We're looking at Ask an Australian. Some awesome posts. Check it out. Alrighty, so first up, what's your favorite bit of Australian history trivia? This will be a great video for comments. Maybe you can answer these yourself, or maybe one of these was you. Let's check it out. So, some old Aussie trivia. For a brief period in the very early days of settlement, rum was an acceptable substitute for money. Holy crap, that's insane. Stuff with currency, especially long ago, is so interesting to me, right? When we think of currency now. In 1920, the captain of the HMAS Sydney enlisted six-year-old Nancy Bentley into the Royal Australian Navy for 8 days so that she could be treated for snakebite without breaching Navy regulations about treating civilians. Ooh, okay. That's interesting. This made Nancy the first woman ever to be enlisted in the RAN, the Royal Australian Navy, right? And possibly the youngest person ever enlisted in any Navy in modern times. You know what? I'll bet. I mean, 6 years old? Jesus, that's young. We're not talking 16 or even like 12, but 6. Yeah, it is crazy. I don't think that's ever happened in modern times. I think they win that one. See, I like random facts and trivia like that. That's so like, so random and stuff that a lot of people have never heard of or definitely wouldn't know, right? I think it's kind of cool. This one's interesting. I still find interesting, and actually I could deep dive sometime because I really haven't deep dived it. I've just heard it many times on the surface from a lot of you guys, and of course, some posts as well, I think. And that is, of course, that you guys lost a PM, right? You lost Prime Minister Harold Holt. He was just vanished and never to be seen again. Now, if you're wondering who the first member of the public was that got saved by the famous New South Wales lifesavers at Bondi Beach, here we go. The first member was using the new innovative rope and reel rescue technology more than 100 years ago. It was a young lad by the name of Charles Kingsford Smith. Can you imagine that? That's kind of interesting. Being the first person that was saved, thankfully saved, right, by the New South Wales lifesavers at Bondi. Get out. That's a cool bit of pub trivia. I'd like to see the source of this one. I mean, yeah, I don't know if that's totally true. I mean, I can't really fact check it, but it sounds good enough to me. It's kind of fun. I mean, someone had to be the first, right? I just wonder how many in the last 100 years have been saved. That'd be a cool number as well. I'm sure it's a lot. Tell me your guesses in the comments. This one's pretty funny, actually. It says the naming of Coober, Pedy, opal capital of the world, of course, famous for its underground dwellings. Absolutely, fascinating place. Still one of the most weird and interesting things I've ever learned about Australia that I definitely did not know about before this channel. It says, in 1920, an official name of the opal field was needed, and the Progress Committee voted that it would be Coober Pedy, an Aboriginal term meaning white man in a hole. The replies, that's brilliant. I love that some of the dry Aboriginal humor is steeped into Australian culture. Well, yeah, they're Australian. They're going to have the effect. Yeah, they summed it up. Admittedly, I guess I kind of always wondered why it was named that. I mean, I kind of think that for a lot of towns and villages and cities in Australia, just because there's some really interesting names, really bizarre names, really clever names, kind of all over. I suppose I could go for anywhere in the world. But yeah, there are definitely some interesting names in Australia that probably have some funny and fascinating, backgrounds on them. This one I did know. I don't know. I'll still say it for those of you that maybe didn't know. Yeah, Melbourne was originally called Batmania. And then someone says Melbourne was originally called Narm. Yeah, I don't know. I actually haven't heard that one. Maybe that's correct, but I have heard the Batmania one. It's pretty fun. Now, this is kind of crazy. At the end of World War II, Australia had the 4th largest air force in the world after the USA, the USSR, and the UK. 4th biggest in the world. Keep in mind, of course, Australia is huge, but not by population, especially compared to basically every country ahead of it. By 1941, Australia had the 7th biggest military budget in the world, only behind Germany, USA, Britain, USSR, Japan, and Canada, ahead of Italy and China, who were considered major powers at the time. Again, it's pretty crazy. Someone adds, it's pretty insane when you think about the smallest of those great powers, UK, had 48 million people, while Canada and Australia had 11 and 7 million respectively. Yeah, Australia just still, back then, and then, of course, still now, just has so much less population than a lot of the big names, the big countries that you usually think about for military power, military budget, whatever. And yeah, like this person added, we've always punched above our weight, still do to this day. Yeah, Australia is like the definition for a country punching above its weight. They really do. It's kind of crazy how little population they have compared to some big players, but Australia really is considered and looked at as one of the big players. It's pretty mind-blowing. This is kind of interesting. Not sure if it's true or not. It says Australia's largest riot in terms of total destruction occurred in Newcastle in 1979 because police shut down a pub, parentheses, the Star Hotel. Wow, okay. I explored that building once with the caretaker's permission during the time it was abandoned. It was eerie, to say the least. 4 large wings, each with separate bar areas, made a square with the central area for the stage and main bar. There must have been hundreds of people there on any given night. That sounds kind of interesting. I feel like I should look that up. See if we can find what it kind of looked like. Anyone know more about this? So if we jump on good old Wiki, it says the Star Hotel riot. Let's see, it was because of the closing of a popular pub, was one of the largest riots in Australian history. An estimated 4,000 people fought with the police on the streets of Newcastle, New South Wales, on the night of September 19th, 1979. Indeed. Okay. Wow, it's interesting. This goes into, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but yeah, it goes into how, the riot started and how it ended up happening. It got pretty crazy indeed. The riot ran for over 2 hours. Cars were on fire, cars were flipped over, a lot of destruction going on. 14 policemen and 8 civilians were injured. 2,800 people, 2,800, yikes. 28 people were charged with 100 offenses. There were $40,000 police vehicles completely burnt. And then in popular culture, it's kind of interesting. It says the Star Hotel closure was the subject of a song by Australian band Cold Chisel. Anyone know about that? That's kind of interesting. It said, on the night the heroes prophetically played the song Star in the Slaughter, the song was written by a previous bass player in the band, Alan Cook, in 1978, a year before the riot. Whoa, the song had nothing to do with the riot. How weird. Star in the Slaughter, when you could argue there was a riot full of some slaughter at the Star Hotel. Whoa, one of those eerie coincidences in history at, events. There is plenty of those that I've heard of, and that's up there. That is pretty freaky, right? A documentary about the Star Hotel riot was produced for the Stories of Our Town project and released in 2019. Wow, that's very recent. So they have a very new, just a couple years old documentary on the matter. Kind of interesting. Wow. And then here's some images. Whoa. That is actually pretty crazy. Look at the car flipped over. People just going crazy there. There is the Star Hotel, the one in question, I believe. Yeah, look at that. Wow. Wow, someone has an old news clip. Oh, it's on Facebook. I wish I could check that out. Maybe I should sometime. Look at this picture. Wow. Neat. I love old pictures, man. They're just interesting. I've done episodes on that before. I think I might do another one soon. They're just really cool. This one's pretty interesting. It says, remember the movie The Memphis Belle? About the American B-17 that completed 25 combat missions. Well, Australia had G for George. Avro Lancaster bomber flew 90 combat missions over occupied Europe and brought every crew member home alive. So 25 for the American B-17 that there was a movie about. 90 for the Aussie ones. And every crew member came home alive, or another Lancaster bomber, S for Sugar, flew 137. No movies about those crews, eh? Well, if that's true, which I'm sure it probably is, it doesn't surprise me. That's Hollywood for you. Someone said Hollywood seems to forget that the USA turned up late to World War II and anyone else was involved. Yeah, I mean, there's some crazy stories out of the U.S., but there's some crazy stories out of everywhere, obviously. And it just doesn't surprise me. Hollywood just has a very usually thin scope or a one-dimensional look on things. And trust me, I know you guys already know this. Hollywood gets a lot of stuff wrong or spins things in a weird light. Yeah, it's annoying. Now, these could be completely made up. I'm not really sure, but I mean, sometimes they're fun to hear just for the sake of it. Someone, supposedly a guy crashed his light aircraft while flying over his own land in Australia and discovered a huge gold reserve. His land was such a large area that he'd never been to that part before, and had he not have crashed, he likely wouldn't have known it was there. Now, that kind of thing, is out there. It's not very specific, no name, no area. But you know what? It is kind of interesting. It could be true, right? I mean, especially that's something I think that is really relevant with like Australia or the U.S. or Canada or something, right? Like, it's just so big, right? The land masses are so big, the countries are so big, and yeah, if you're lucky, you can buy huge properties. If you have a property with 1,000 acres or 5,000 acres or whatever, hell, even 500 acres. I mean, you're dealing with a huge property, and depending on how the terrain is and if there's a lot of trees and forests and mountains or whatever, some, parts of it might not really be accessible. Depending on how it is, you might not just visit, a percentage of your own land, and yeah, you just never know what's hidden on there. It's kind of interesting, right? This is an interesting one. Aussies living overseas, what are your homesick remedies? This would be a great one for comments. If you want to weigh in on this, if you're abroad for a long time, what do you do to deal with, being homesick for Australia? Some interesting ones here, like go to a local Aussie or New Zealand bar. Yeah, that'd be cool. I'll have to look that up. I wonder if there's Aussie bars near me. That's kind of interesting concept. So this one's really cool. Sometimes I watch old Qantas ads or play Aussie bird sounds on the Google Home. That's kind of cool. There's a funny number you can call. No way. 1-800-Australia. That's 1-800-787-292 for homesick Aussies. It basically gives you a menu of nostalgic and familiar sounds. Should I call that? That sounds so interesting. Let me try that real quick. I wonder if that would work for me. I'm kind of curious now. Okay, I got the number in there. I don't know if this will even work, right?
Welcome to Verizon Wireless. Your call cannot be completed as dialed. Please check the number and dial again.
Nope, I figured as such. I mean, that's a different number structure, different, number of numbers than we would dial here in the U.S. So, and then, yeah, I don't know. I don't even know how my phone plan works for like super international calls like that. So, yeah, it didn't work. This one's anti-Americanism in Australia. I'm Canadian who has been living down here for almost 4 years. Something that happens to me once a week or more is when I speak, people will guess I'm American from my accent. When I say I'm from Canada, there's a sigh of relief that I'm not a bloody Yank, and then they'll should talk Americans after that. I'm not saying don't make fun of Americans or their government or culture, but so many Australians have this real contempt for American people. Am I missing something here? Did the Yankees really hurt Australia in some way? Well, I think that's just their experience, right? Now, of course, I haven't walked around Australia and experienced this or whatever, but I just can speak as a human being. I think that that's very specific, and I think, of course, most people would be cool, would be chill, wouldn't, bother you just because of where you came from. I think most people are generally pretty good, and I think that this probably could happen, especially with being an American, right? I think we're just at this point conditioned to expect that from not just Australia, but almost anywhere. And that's just something that I think everyone has to live with in some way or another, right? You see, there's really no right answer here. On one hand, I think people can think what they want, and they can like what they want. They can like what they like and dislike what they dislike. As long as it doesn't, really hurt anyone or have it consume their life, I mean, I don't think it's a huge deal. But at the same time, people can do what they want or think what they want. I also tend to wonder what people, why they're motivated to hate something, right? So if there are some Australians that hate Americans, maybe it's from experience, like actual experience. I think sometimes it might be just trying to fit in, like, oh, it's popular to hate Americans, so I hate Americans too. I think there's both. I think some people don't really have any substance behind it, and some people probably do hate them for a reason, and, maybe that's justified or whatever. And it's funny, as an American, we have a lot of bad apples out there that unfortunately represent all 300 plus million of us, and it's not fair, man. Like, what the hell? I mean, if you meet an asshole American, that sucks because they're making us look bad, and there's a lot of amazing people here. So that's just too bad. But on to the comments. I think most of it is just hanging shit on friends. There are some factors that can be irksome. When I was living at a res college for uni, we'd have a few American exchange students every semester. One a week, we had a drinking game where every time one of them said, "It's not like this back in the States, we drink." My liver still hasn't forgiven me. Now that I can see, I don't know. I think most people, maybe in their head, maybe they don't speak it out loud, but I think, of course, most people, if they're traveling the world, are going to have a lens of their whole life spent somewhere, and then they're going to, at some level, find comparisons, find similarities and differences of where they're at compared to where they're from. I think that's just kind of human nature. Now, of course, Americans might be louder about that type of thing, might actually say it instead of just think it. So that kind of doesn't surprise me. And I think that is pretty funny, right? Like, making a drinking game out of it. That might be pretty rough on your liver for sure. In my defense, I almost feel funny about that one too, because I tend to say that on this channel. I look at things in other countries, and then sometimes, not all the time, I might chime in my experience with that topic here in the U.S. and how it compares, or how it can, totally differs from what I'm looking at. And in that case, I'm going to defend myself and say that's kind of the point, though, of the video, kind of the point of the channel, is I'm looking about different topics and different cultures and different countries, and I'm learning about them. And part of the appeal of the channel is also comparing them. Like, I'm looking at it through my American upbringing lens, and I think that is interesting for me, watching things and knowing how it compares to my experience. I think it's also interesting for the viewer, because if the viewer is not from the U.S., then they find my perspective interesting as it compares to theirs, and as it compares to whatever we're all watching or learning about on the video. So in my case, I'm going to act like it's justified. But if I was in normal, just out in the world, I would try, because I don't want to be like an American stereotype, like the worst kind. I would try and just keep quiet and learn about things, and have normal conversations. I would try not to bring up life in the U.S. like constantly, right? Because that would be annoying after a while. And on the flip side, this is what I would hope to achieve. I'm American, and I've lived here for over a year. So they're American, they're in Australia. Nobody ever asks about their accent, nor cares where they're from. Maybe it's my personality, or maybe I don't get out much. And they add, I will add that I keep to myself when in public and refrain from being a stereotype of the loud, rude, brash American. Situational awareness is awesome. I love it in Australia, and I feel very privileged to be able to live here. Yeah, see, that's what I like to hear. You can have your life in America. You can like what you like and dislike what you like from there, but keep it in here. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But just be chill and talk about normal stuff in public, right? You don't got to compare it to wherever you're from all the time, because sometimes it's just not necessary. So I like to hear that they're having a great time, and they don't really catch a lot of flack. That's good. And Scott sums it up perfectly here. To end this whole conversation, that's the thing. Wherever you're from, I think. If you're a normal, likable person, you won't cop shit. If you're a dickhead, you'll hear about it. You know what? Bravo. I could have just skipped everything I said and said that. And as a final, I do want to add this, because I kind of relate to this. As individuals, most Australians like most Americans. I think it's just the America we see on the news and the internet that we resent, as well as a few loud, arrogant wakers who want to shove their gun control, Medicare, lockdown opinions that we overwhelmingly disagree with down our throats. See, that's the thing. Like, the American news and internet is usually just really... it's trash, right? It's a lot of BS and a lot of crazy stuff. And, what do you know? We agree on that. A lot of Americans don't like that crap either. And to end it, I think this one's funny because I can relate to this one. What does it mean when other guys greet you as big fella? I've noticed since moving to Australia that a lot of men greet me as big fella specifically, or Big Al, short for Alejandro. Is there an intention behind its opposed, or is there intention behind this as opposed to the myriad of other Australianisms out there? At first I thought they were calling me fat, except I'm not fat, and they seem to use it affectionately. Yeah, I think with this one, before I even get to these, I think I'm big, right? And regardless, I'm a little bigger now, but I was really in shape, and actually before I was in shape, I was very thin. So, I've been on the thinner side most of my life, and I was called big fella a lot. So I don't think it has to do with being fat. I think it just has to do with being big. And I am big. I mean, I'm like 6'4" ish. Like, I can relate to that. I've heard that here in the U.S. Many times from just random people, and I didn't take offense to it. I thought it was fitting, I thought it was fun. Yeah, and then, that's what people think down here. To me, it's friendly with a bit of respect. I agree. If you're a big guy, it's just they're giving you a nickname. What's up, big fella? I think it's just like a friendly greeting. I don't think it's like a bad thing at all. Absolutely an expression of friendship or affection. No need to overthink it. The part I would enjoy in Australia that's probably, slightly different than here in the U.S. is, of course, we would share general terms like that, like big fella. I could hear that in Australia. I could hear that in the U.S., right? That's not a big deal. But what I like is you guys are really good at nicknames. So not more generic ones like that, but of course nicknames that have to do with your name. So in this case, like Alejandro, Big Al, it's not the best example, but it works still. Like AL is in the beginning of the name, so Big Al. The names, the nicknames Australians come up with that I've seen in comments, I've heard from you guys, that I've seen, in posts like this, they're top notch. Like, only in Australia would you find some of these things. It's pretty cool. But hey, that's going to be it for this one. That is Ask an Australian. I love doing these fun Reddit episodes. It's been a while again. I keep going like 2 or 3 weeks between these. I need to do them like way more often. So I'm going to try and do that. Hope you guys had a great weekend, and I hope you're going to have a great week coming up. Throw a like on there if you enjoyed this one. Subscribe to be part of this amazing community we do have here. That's about it for this one, y'all. My name is Ian. You're watching IWrocker, and until next time, catch you later.